I think our executive team, should talk about. And also we have some institutions that, let's say, pay for 2 members, but we have 5 and 6 people showing up to all of our meetings. And we have other institutions that are paying for 7 and 8 members, so that all their members can come. And so I think the membership dues is something that we'll need to take a look at with the executive team and bring a proposal back for our fall meeting. And unless anyone has questions, that's it for me.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you.
Any questions? Oh, Brian. We are on to organization reports. First up is McD.
All right. Okay, sorry, I'm trying to do these 2 meetings, so let me mute this. Okay. Hi, everybody. So MACD, what we're planning 2 weeks from today, we're planning a business meeting, and whoops, let me look at exactly the time because I only wrote down the date. So we're planning like a 9 to 11 business meeting, and I'm going to send out the invitation to both the MACD listserv, and if you'll indulge me, I'll send it through the DARTEP listserv, and just delete if this is not interesting to you. And I apologize for the spam, but this way we can capture people that may have thought they're on the MACD listserv and are not. In addition, we are planning our June retreat for the 13th and through the 15th, and we'll send out information along those lines up at Northern Michigan University. And I'd like to thank our planning team that helped work with the wonderful accreditation and continuous improvement work that we did on yesterday with that, if you had a chance to attend, and do a big hug shout out to our partners at the MDE, in particular, Gina and Sean and all the other cast of characters. But Gina is our resident rock star of all things professional development. And I think we all should just give her a big round of applause right now and a virtual hug because of the support that we're getting. So with that, I'm sorry that I have to step out and go to this other meeting, but it is MDE related. So I'm still working towards the cause. So are there any questions? And if not, I'll scoot out.
Thank you, Beth. Okay, Michigan Public Deans. Will the real Mike McDonald present?
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. That's what I get for throwing you under the DARTEP bus a couple of years ago in Atlanta, right? Anyways, good morning. Next year, Marcia Fetters will be wearing a few more hats than she owns more hats than I don't know who, but she will be the incoming president of Michigan Public Education Deans next year. Our final meeting of the year will be April 20th, just on the cusp of AARA. And although we haven't met since my last report out, I have provided a few links here of things that we're going to be addressing directly or indirectly. 2 of the items are just House bills that are supported by the MDE, from my understanding, concerning the certification of those from out-of-state licensure. So there are no real issues or concerns, I don't believe, with those, but we're going to put them on our agenda. We're going to be looking at extending a conversation with Launch Michigan. I put a link here. I'm meeting with them on Monday, and Dan Hurley and I are going to explore their future teacher support ideas. And I'll have more for DARTEP in the fall on that. But they're going to be not only meeting with me on Monday, but they'll be perhaps visiting the Michigan Public Education Deans Council meeting to talk about their initiatives to support teacher candidates pathways. So more on that the next time I see you all. The other thing that we're going to take up is something that we looked at a year ago, and that's working with the Michigan Department of Civil Rights and the Tribal Council on swinging back to culturally appropriate practices concerning names, mascots, iconography, etc. And looking at our progress in Michigan in that regard. So I'll have some exciting things to report next time based on those meetings. And you can see the links in the chat for some of those items I've mentioned. Marcia, is there anything I've missed?
No, I think that covers it all.
Okay, so thank you.
Any questions? Thank you, Mike. And then we have the Michigan Independent. I have Lori's name next to it, but I see Susan unmuted, so.
Not sure, if is Lori here? I haven't seen her yet today. So the Michigan Independents, we do have a meeting date set next month, May 19th. We are meeting in Lansing at MICU at the Michigan Independent Colleges and Universities offices downtown. So it's not a large space. So we're kind of anticipating one, maybe two representatives tops from each organization. We sent out the invitation to our current list of who's dean or chair or director of the program. So ask around. If your institution did not get that, feel free to reach out to me and we'll forward you the invitation. They will have a live streaming option, but we'd much prefer to have people in person as we discuss shared challenges with grade banding, conversions, with marketing. That's another project that we're resurrecting, is marketing and recruiting new teachers, right? Okay. Future proud Michigan educators, but with an independent organization, kind of shared resource slant to it. So yeah, that's right. Lori's still on sabbatical. Yes, suffering in Florida. She's down here too. But I think that's it. So May 19 in Lansing, email me if you need the information or send me a chat in the text here. Thanks.
Thank you, Susan. And then we have our special guest, Ray Francis from MATE.
Hey, good morning, everybody. My job this morning is to make a couple of real quick announcements. Every year we do the Student Teacher of the Year competition. This year we have an elementary and a secondary winner. In the future, we're going to be lined up with more with the grade bands, et cetera, et cetera. But for this year, our elementary Michigan ATE Student Teacher of the Year is Gina Noland. If you don't know Gina, she's a student at Aquinas College doing a second and third grade split at St. Joseph's School. Her cooperating teacher is Diane Spence, and she was nominated by Stacy Smolsky. And according to Patricia Umara, the principal at St. Joseph's, she has understood from the very beginning of what it is to be a teacher. Her work goes beyond understanding, and her work there has been beneficial not only to herself, but those she has contact with every day. So if you know about or know Gina or any of the other folks at Aquinas, give me about an hour to get their notices sent out, and then I will get that one. We try and in the past, we've always announced it here first and then sent out emails. Second winner is our secondary winner. So the Michigan ATE Student Teacher of the Year for the secondary level is Ann Findley from Central Michigan University. She teaches a 9-10 grade robotics technology. She's hosted by Dwayne Moss at Chelsea High School, and she was submitted or nominated by Tara Turrentine, again, Central Michigan University. She's an outstanding student. She implements a variety of innovative, collaborative, thoughtful, and unique lesson plans in the things she does. Her students are always engaged, and it's just awesome for her and them to receive that award. So those letters will go out by, let's say, 11 o'clock. So if you want to talk to anybody from Aquinas, Susan, not yet, please. And if you just give me an hour, and then we'll go from there. But just so you know, it was a good competition this year. The number of submissions were down a bit, but still robust in my opinion. And I would like to thank everybody who volunteered. As in the past, they review these anonymously so that nobody is actually asking questions about too many things. But thank you to everybody who participated in the process, and stay tuned for more information. And our fall meeting will be, I'm going to catch up with Susan and see if we can't do the fall Michigan ATE meeting following the DARTEP meeting in Aquinas. So that's it for me. Thank you all very much. Have a great day.
Thank you, Ray. That's fun and exciting. Honoring candidates. Okay, I think we are up to Sean. I'm assuming Sean's making this presentation, but
Yes,
so
yes.
we are going to give a little background on some of the state budget and grant that may be coming out, and grants that may be coming out. And then we'd like to transition from there into a panel discussion about those that have already implementing these type of programs. And so we can have that discussion and answer questions, ask questions. So that's the plan. Floor is yours,
Great.
Sean.
Great, thank you. So what I've brought together are some excerpts from the Governor's State Budget Office presentation, which was released earlier this year. And at our previous DARTEP meetings, we've heard from Dr. Rice, and you've seen his the editorials that he wrote and letters to the legislature on funding priorities for revitalizing the educator workforce. And the State Budget Office picked up almost all of those recommendations in their in the executive budget recommendations, which were released to the legislature. And so the link that is there, you can see the whole budget presentation. You can find links to read draft legislation and get really far into the weeds. So I'm going to just go through some key highlights. And yeah, that's the easy, quick URL for that michigan.gov/mybudget. There are several areas that were of focus. The one I'm going to focus on in the priorities for fiscal year 23 are education, putting students first. Now, within this executive budget, note that recommendations, there are funds for all of these things for both fiscal year 2022, using up supplemental funds that we have both from COVID relief, ESSER funds, and unexpected higher revenues of state money, plus going into fiscal year 23. So that there would be, if all of these are picked up, there would be money to use before October 1st, as well as money to use after October 1st. So putting Michigan students first is a key plank. So if we go right ahead into that. The next one, there are three big buckets of funding and conversation pieces in this. One, historic and equitable funding. I'm going to skip the slides that I have on that, because what's most interesting, I think, for us is the talent in schools, and then the mental health and safe schools elements of this. So if we go right ahead to, yes. The $1.6 billion put forward for this Talent in Schools initiative, and it's over several areas. So the first one, which is actually not part of what we put into it, is $1.5 billion for retention bonuses for in-service educators to retain our teachers through that critical period of the first 4 years and onward. One thing that we did ask for in this was this second part of teacher onboarding, induction, and mentoring. So $50 million in fiscal year 22 and another 50 in year 3 to support quality mentoring. So developing some mentoring resources statewide with support of universities. So this is an opportunity for EPIs to engage in this work, but then also some money to districts to offset the work of a mentor teacher and allow for that extra space for quality mentoring, knowing that quality mentoring is a key factor in the retention of teachers. The third piece on this slide is regional innovation grants, and it's $75 million. it sounds very vague. Local and regional partnerships for identifying community needs and creating some plans that work on recruitment and retention. Inside that is where we had a lot of ideas, like creating regional hubs to evaluate people who have received, who've gone through teacher preparation, but have never got their certificates, but have served in schools in some way, and how to accelerate them to certificates, how to create some hubs that do evaluations of experiential learning, and prescribed courses of study. It's not the only thing that we would have in mind here, but looking to those kinds of innovative practices to help bring more people into the certified workforce. Let's go to the next slide. The Future Educator Fellowship, 250 million, so 150 million for this, and then 100 million ongoing after that, annually. And this is a competitive scholarship, first-time degree seekers that would apply to Treasury for their to offset their teacher preparation coursework and expenses. And so that's a quite an exciting piece. One of the messages we tried to carry was making the pathway to funds as streamlined as possible. And so in this case, it's candidates going directly to Treasury, and those who are qualified and approved, money going straight to EPIs from there rather than through grants, through Grow Your Own grants, which we also have in here. 50 million for school leaders, and that's a similar thing, but for school admin and mental health professionals. So school counselors, school social workers, school psychologists. So being able to pay for advanced study in those areas. Stipends for student teachers, with some prioritization around first needs on Pell eligible students, but some stipends right now to cover that. And then Grow Your Own, 150 million. Now you note that we got $1 million this year for Grow Your Own efforts. This is would be a massive expansion of what we were able to do with the $1 million that was allotted in the previous budget. It says 150, but it's 150 like in it was like between 50 and 100 for fiscal year 2022, and then 150 thereafter for 23. But again, grow your own partnerships between EPIs and LEAs to be able to grow your own, support their staff moving forward. I wanted to reference some of the mental health and safe schools. I didn't study all of the details in this, but I did want to include it because one of the things that was talked about yesterday at the Hope Conference was supporting students' mental health needs and how programs were seeing more issues, right? Both with student teachers and then student teachers encountering issues with students in this space. So several initiatives for funding school-based mental health professionals to be practicing in school, to develop more screenings, money for expanded health clinics in schools, to provide more specialized services. We can go to the next slide. And continuing on this with school-based mental physical health programs, school safety grants, as we know, that's quite very important, and some additional educational investments as listed there for modernizing the infrastructure, the Detroit literacy payments, so paying off from that lawsuit, and then more money for before and after school programs. So the next slide. For higher education, I figure you'd be interested in this. All of these numbers for operations, increasing the per student funding floor. Again, the money that goes right to the university, not necessarily the teacher prep program specifically, but increasing funding for universities, increasing for community colleges, and then more item funding for infrastructure improvements. So if we go to the next, I wanted to take a bit to talk about what we're doing already, and that $1 million that was allocated in Future Proud Michigan Educator. Future Proud Michigan Educator is, of course, the brand over which several initiatives may be grouped, depending on what somebody wants to do. So go to the next slide. We had these Future Proud Michigan Educator grants to cover, on the far left, grow your own grants for school staff seeking initial certification or certified teachers pursuing additional endorsements. And then some micro grants for explore course development and program development for really sparking an interest among 612 students. So we had $1 million to cover that, both of those things. And so if we go to the next slide, we took the state funding of $1 million and divvied it up between school personnel and micro grants for schools for phase one. And we recognized that this was going to probably go very fast. So we had access to another $1 million in federal funding that we'll use in phase two. And just to give you a sense of the scope in phase one, we imagined we put $800,000 toward the school personnel and $200,000 toward the Explore micro grants, and that would cover 80 $10,000 awards for school personnel and 80 $2,500 awards for the Explore micro grants. We received applications worth over $3 million to support over 1,000 educators for a program that we didn't, quite have that much for. And because fewer requests were received for Explore micro grants in this first phase, we're still able to fund nearly twice as many educators as we had anticipated. So we're looking at over 150 educators distributed across the state in all 10 regions of the state. But still, the majority will not be able to be funded from that. You see how many were requested. And so phase two, we will launch later this spring. Again, it has an expanded spending timeline. So going back again to the beginning of this current semester through fall of 2023, as well as course grants for the Explore programs. We hope to have obviously much more money from the legislature to fund expanded expansions of this. Because even with this next $1 million, we're not going to be able to get all of those requests that came in. I will say some requests were for money to go to Grand Canyon University and or Western Governors, and we threw those right out. And so, but still, we had, well over what we had been allocated. It's not a bad problem to have. I mean, we certainly can give this money out, but we're going to need to get a lot more in order to satisfy this great need. And so there were a couple of questions in the chat that I want to just grab before we go any further.
Yeah, we have 3 of them. You start with Susan.
And that's with funding only go to teachers at public LEAs or also to teachers at private and parochial schools. The draft legislation or the draft in the budget recommendations, I believe, has just LEAs and ISDs referenced. It doesn't include the private schools, but that is something that can be negotiated with the legislature. So the legislature is able to make that. So we haven't seen the legislature pick up these recommendations yet and put them into legislation, but that is certainly a space where it could be. There's also a couple of places in it that in these different funds, streams of funds, where it specifies public universities rather than private universities. And so we'd want to advocate for it to be expanded to include all approved Michigan educator preparation institutions and not exclude private schools. To whom does the word, from Gail, to whom does the word student refer in the third bullet? And I'm trying to see which slide. I went through a lot of slides. And if Gail wants to, you want to clarify which.
I think it was that slide you were just at, Sean. Back to one
Okay.
more.
Brian's driving. So
I think it was that one. Yeah, right there, I think.
This one, student teachers. Yeah, this would be, if I'm thinking third big bullet for student teachers, this would be our candidates in our college students who have reached student teaching and internship. So yeah, that's what that references. So yeah, our interns, not high school students. And Marcia asked, for career changers, will they qualify if they have a degree in a different field? That would be to be determined, I guess, because again, these are recommendations that haven't been unpacked into law and haven't been unpacked, of course, into policy yet. Some of these grants would be things that our office would administer. Others are ones that would go through Treasury. So I'd imagine, should all of this get picked up, we're going to spend a lot of time talking to Treasury and giving them some information about what all of this entails. What's an approved EPI, for example? So that's a to be unpacked. So we encourage you, write to your legislators, say, and we've given you the links. You can reference all of the state budget items or recommendations. And Dr. Rice had been on a press for the legislature to take all of this up before the first day of spring. That has passed, so it's continues to be urgent. Money for fiscal year 2022 is not going to help if it doesn't become available until the very end of fiscal year 2022. So that's why we want to see some action on this. All right, I think that kind of my streamlined talk through all of this and be ready for the panel.
So we need to start getting the wheels turning. Coming up with ideas. Okay, so we wanted to kind of take that as we're thinking about the monies that may be coming our way and thinking about innovative programs and things we'd like to do in our institutions. We thought we would share, have some institutions that have some expedited residency programs that have been running and have been in existence for a while, and kind of have them share those programs and what they've learned about those programs, what works great. And then just kind of opening it up for questions and a discussion so that we can kind of also learn from what they've learned. That sound, I don't know. So we have from Saginaw Valley State University, Dr. James Tarr, the Dean of the college. And hopefully Joe is here. So Joe Lubick from Northern Michigan University will be joining us, and Aquinas College, Susan will also be sharing. Joe's here, yay. I know Joe had a very busy day, so thank you for being here. And I'm not sure if Susan, because you're chair-elect, do you want to start? Kind of get us going?
Hi, I welcome this opportunity. I think it might be helpful if the three of us kind of go in order as they're listed on the slide and maybe do a brief overview of each of our programs, and I'll go third. James, if you want to go first, that would be great.
Sure thing. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm James Tarr. I'm Dean of the College of Education at SVSU. And I'm here to talk about our accelerated certification with residency program. Just to give you a little bit of background on that, we're in our 5th of 5 years of approval for a non-degree experimental program. We submitted, the faculty submitted, and on behalf of the administration, an application to MDE in 2016, and it was approved in December 2016. We actually started running the program in the summer of 2017. So it's called accelerated certification with residency, and there are kind of 3 key parts to that. Accelerated in that teacher candidates can complete all program requirements, coursework and residency in 1 year. It does target those with bachelor's degrees. So I'll say a little bit more about that, but upon successful completion of the requirements, that is when they are eligible to apply to MDE for the standard teaching certificate. So that's the accelerated part. It is, it's 1 year, but it's 1 year after earning a bachelor's degree, at least a bachelor's degree. So the certification, we have 2 types of certification, the elementary level and the secondary level. Now, our elementary certification reflects the former grade bands, so K through 8 and secondary as well. So these will be need to be revised here in our next phase. So the residency part, there are actually two options for teacher candidates. One is to be the teacher of record, and the other is to be a co-teacher. The co-teacher is akin to a standard student teaching model, where it's really not your classroom, it is your host teacher's classroom. It's an unpaid residency, notwithstanding the proposals for stipends for student teachers that are proposed. So it resembles a standard student teaching residency. It is a year-long residency, however, and not a standard semester. The teacher of record, though, is, as the name would suggest, you are the teacher. It is a full year position. The school calendar is that of the district in which the resident is working. The pay for it would vary and be negotiated with the school district in which the teacher of record is doing the residency. But both the co-teacher and the teacher of record, they are hired by the school under a full-time basic substitute permit, at least for that year. So prerequisites for admission. All students need to, prospective students need to attend an ACR informational meeting. So they know what they're getting into and also can get their questions answered. They need a bachelor's degree or higher from a regionally accredited institution. And they need to have a minimum cumulative GPA of 3.0. They would then schedule an individual advising appointment, review the transcripts, and just to determine some next steps. And as a condition of admission, they need to have taken and passed the MTTC in the appropriate area. So without going into the weeds too much here about the program, it does begin in the summer before the school calendar. There is just one course, and it's taken, so at SVSU we have a spring session and a summer session. This would be during the summer session. They have a seminar that you're required to participate in, and it's just 1 credit hour. And then the real meat of the program is in the fall semester and the winter semester. And it's a full slate, especially on the elementary side. And I can give you more details on that if time permits a bit later. I will say, and maybe this might be surprising or not, I'm not sure, but more than 80% of our ACR teacher candidates choose the teacher of record residency option. I kind of wish it were the opposite. Certainly, they get more support in a residency that is akin to student teaching, the traditional student teaching. And that might explain why we have higher attrition rates in the teacher of record residency model. I can give you some more details on that, but those are the two options. They complete it in about a year. They apply for, and we recommend them to MDE for the full standard teaching license. So with that, I'll turn it over to the next panelist.
Joe?
Hi, everybody. How you doing? I'm fine. Thanks for asking. All right. So the program that we've been primarily focused on, which has really helped us spin off into other opportunities to support our schools, primarily in the Upper Peninsula, was a grant-funded program, and it was called Step Up, Secondary Teacher Education Program in the Upper Peninsula. And we chose to focus on secondary because that's where we felt our strength was for doing anything online. So we really didn't see the coursework and the integration of coursework opportunities for all the clinicals and all the literacy, all the other components at the elementary level. The graduate coursework just wasn't there. So we matched up our undergrad program to the graduate level coursework, and then put this out primarily again to our Upper Peninsula teachers, schools, and we got a really good response. The primary focus, of course, was folks who had bachelor's degrees in a teachable secondary field where we were authorized to certify somebody. They may have needed a couple of content courses to round out their coursework, and we work with our community college and tribal college partners to find that coursework online. So that just worked into the plan of study. We used our Masters of Instruction as our primary plan of study for all the pedagogical and internship requirements. And that worked out really well, I thought, because we were able to structure something that provided folks with an opportunity to complete a master's degree. So that was helpful and motivating, I think, to enrollees, because that also benefited them on the pay scale in most instances. So that was good. We admitted just like we would for any graduate program. So if somebody didn't have a 3.0, they came in on probation and we worked with them. But I think the best thing that we had was most of the folks that enrolled were the teacher of record, right, under a temporary certificate. And so they had the MTTC exam already addressed. They had all those other pieces, which helped us make purposeful decisions around content coursework, right? If somebody passed the exam, we were able to work with them and the school site and say, well, let's look at this. Like, do you really need to beef up your content coursework in any of these areas? And it was really neat to see how honest folks were. Some of them with the idea that, yeah, I could be teaching this. I probably should take a course in this. I'm not really strong. So we felt we had a good, honest relationship with the enrollees in the school sites. Since we initiated this program about 4 years ago, it's expanded into folks who complete a bachelor's degree in a teachable area, but haven't enrolled, in any teacher ed courses. So right now I have about 11 students who are taking graduate level coursework online, connected to a school site. And so they're, a substitute teacher, or they could be an instructional aide, those types of things. But they're connected to a school site in some way, and they're pursuing a master's degree that will also allow them to be a certified teacher. And again, we're enrolling them in our Masters of Instruction, our pedagogical track, to support that. I think the spinoff from it's been really good, because we're now getting people that are elementary certified who are practicing teachers who want to add a secondary certificate. So again, we're able to look at coursework, look at the MTTC objectives, and look at their current school site, and have them participate and work with the secondary classroom setting, do an internship, and make sure that they're meeting all the expectations we have. But the Step Up program, it's really benefited our school partners and then individuals who never considered teaching, until this was available. And I think more importantly, it's given us confidence as a program to really take some risks in other areas that are calculated, but that prepare us for all the opportunities that Sean Cockey just talked about. We feel like we have a good system, good online course delivery platform, and now we're making considerations for other licensure areas. For initial early childhood, we're fully confident we can do our early childhood program initial licensure online, and we're still wading through those murky waters for the elementary. We're not there yet for the PK 3 or the 3-6 grade bands to offer anything initial cert online. So we're trying to show restraint and stay within our wheelhouse to make sure that we're doing a good job and giving our clinical partners the confidence that we can do a good job and help them get certified, people certified in needed areas. So thanks.
Thanks, Joe. All right, I'll go over what we do at Aquinas. We have a lot of overlap, so I'll try to just differentiate ours and give some other information. While I'm talking though, I'd encourage people to put questions in the chat, and Jennifer, perhaps you could help monitor those. I'm not going to look while I'm talking, but if people do have general questions for the panel or for the broader DARTEP group, go ahead and start putting those in if you'd like. We're in the 3rd year. We're interviewing now for our 4th cohort. Our experimental program is also accelerated, AIM, Accelerated Master in Education. Similarly, it requires that you come in with a bachelor's degree. We do both elementary and secondary. We require secondary candidates to pass the MTTC prior to launching into the program. The elementary candidates, we look at other math and literacy indicators to ensure competency, GPA from college courses, but we don't have them take the test until later because of the language and the content that's on the elementary certification exam. We cover that, right, in the courses that they take. Ours is a strong cohort model, and that's part of our screening, is we screen for personality, professionalism, and we're very upfront with them that we have a very intense one-year program, and it requires all participants to be very transparent with themselves. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? To be part of a cohort and to embrace that professional learning community, to be open to feedback. That's a huge part of our program. Our professors that teach in the program are very responsive to the needs of the cohort, to the needs of individuals, and we adjust content as we move through the year. It starts in the summer. Initially, our first year, we actually started in August, and over the past 2 years have put more and more in that summer back to June. Classroom management and a number of cohort building components that we put in. And that seems to be, there are pros and cons. I could go into those, but anyway, it starts in the summer and then goes throughout the year. And by the end of the following summer, we can recommend candidates for certification. They attend class every Monday. Hopefully you're back to fully online on campus. For a while, we had to do the Zoom stuff, which was not ideal for a cohort model, but they did great. They did really well. So every Monday evening and 2 Saturday mornings a month, they participate in either courses or cohort meetings as they're meeting. And then there's independent online work. The residency component is highly variable. James was talking about, his 2 options. We probably have a dozen different options that we've worked with. They track their clinical hours, and all the different types of clinical hour buckets have to get filled. And we work with them individually, but it can be very creative. We had one individual, delightful teacher now who was the school librarian, and she really wanted to move into being a classroom teacher, but she had to keep her librarian position. And so the school worked with her, and she would push her library hours to the afternoon, and every morning for the year she could work with as a co-teacher with one of the classroom teachers. We have parapros, we have teachers of record, we have all different combinations. So it's very individualized. The first year, I think we had 10 participants in the cohort. The second year we had 18. This year we have 27. It's about an even split between elementary and secondary. And that's kind of our cap, is at about 30 that's our capacity. And we have 2 full-time faculty members. That's not all they do. They teach other classes, but one works with the secondary and one works the elementary, so that these program participants are able to really build a relationship, and we can track them. I think what else? One other thing is that they go through this 1-year certification. The coursework is at the graduate level, and then we encourage them to take a break, but we also encourage them to come back and do additional thesis coursework and additional graduate credits if they need it, so that it does eventually lead to a master's degree, but they don't have to. We have some career changers who are in their 40s or 50s, and they don't need or want to go on and pursue that master's degree, so that's not required. I think that's all I have. Okay.
We do have a couple of questions.
Okay.
So the first one is to James. Would you be willing to go into the attrition issue for the teacher of record track in your program? What is the attrition rate? Have you developed a profile of folks who succeed, I'm assuming, as the teacher of record in the teacher of record track?
Sure. Well, I appreciate the question. To the issue of attrition, I mean, attrition is a problem for everybody, whether it's traditional or alternative routes. With respect to ACR, if you think about it, those who are in the teacher of record residency model, they're full-time teachers, they are first-year teachers, and they are full-time students. So full-time student, full-time first-year teacher, that is a lot to ask of anyone. So those who think they want to be a teacher and are enticed by salary and benefits, and why wouldn't you be if you think about it? The reality hits that that wow, teaching is a lot more work than I thought, and this coursework is pretty heavy also. So that is a primary indicator or predictor of attrition, is just the capacity to handle the dual roles of teacher and student, and the full-time capacity of each. As for specific rates, so I'll start with the traditional, the co-teacher model. We've had 52 teacher candidates choose that route, and only 2 of them did not complete the program. The teacher of record, we've had 252, so about 5 times more, and 18 of them have not finished the program. So if you look at actual rates, it's 3.7% versus 7.1, almost double for the teacher of record. As for profiles, I don't know that we've formally developed, profiles of those who've finished or those who haven't, but there are a variety of reasons, and certainly one is just the extent to which their experience matches what their expectations were coming in. A lot of people think, oh, I could be a teacher, or I want to be a teacher, and then you get in teaching in elementary, all subject areas all day long, with little preparation, undeniably, on the front end. I mean, we do something in the form of a seminar, but our traditional program, they have field experiences, for years that are intentional, and in ACR, the teacher candidates don't have that coming in. So some will just say, teaching is not what I thought it was.
And thank
I know.
you. That was
If
really
I can-
interesting.
If I can jump in and piggyback on
Yep.
that last comment, that is one of the things that we require now is our student contact hours. It's part of the application process where they have to demonstrate that they have had some. So James, you could consider that, for yours too. It's not hard to get, right? And sometimes they just have to think of all the things that they've done. They were a scout leader, or they were a coach, or they were a tutor, or they were, different things. But and then we talk through that during the interview and screening process. What has their exposure been? We've had some candidates who come in with little to none, and we've sometimes put them off for a year and said, okay, this coming year, why don't you do this while you're still doing your other day job? And then you'll know if this is really the right career. And we're also very explicit about how intense it is. We've had very low attrition rates. Our program is very small, but we also we really hammer it home that this is a very intense program. And if you've got a baby on the way, or if you've got, and we actually had 2 couples go through with the dads who had new babies, and that was pretty tough. But if you've got a new baby, if you've got a senior in high school, if you've got these other life events, maybe you better wait a year and let's talk to you next year about doing it then. And that has helped. Joe, do you want to weigh in on some of this?
I think the advantage that we're seeing in the way our program's been set up is the online courses all have a direct connection to a classroom space, right? Because all of our master's programs, when they were originally designed, were for people to add licensure routes. And so we just assumed everybody would have access to classroom spaces, right? And so that's been a real advantage for us. The curriculum development course requires you have access to children or young adults, right? And to a school setting and to a curriculum where you can actually implement something, improvement of instruction, the same thing, and on and on. So that's been a real plus for us. What we've noticed is kind of exactly what James and Susan are saying is the people that are applying to the program and come in and stay are the ones who they've chosen a community. So they want to be in Rapid River, Michigan. They want to contribute to that community. So they're investing the time and energy there. And because of that, they have strong family and friend connections, which gives them a direct connection to the school setting if they're not already hired there in some capacity. And so that's been a real advantage for us. And that's something we talk to people about, right? I'm not discouraging people who don't have that from enrolling, but that's something we really talk about. And then for me, it's, people coming in, they have a business degree, and like, I can try to help them, even though, they have strong connections to the community and such, but I really can't ethically get them to licensure unless they have that coursework and all the other things. So we're trying to do the Macy's Gimbal thing and send them to other folks in the state, right, where they can maybe get some support or look at a career tech ed program or those kinds of things. And hopefully they follow through. And then we're just following up with the school administrator to make them aware of the decision or the recommendation we made regarding that individual.
Okay. Next question. So Susan and others who use MTTC for admission for secondary education, how do you plan to modify this with the new standards that will likely include pedagogy as part of the MTTC?
Yes, we've had that discussion, and that I'm afraid we're going to have to not use that in the same way. We're going to have to push that further down into the program, but College Board has a general knowledge proficiency that's worked for elementary candidates for math and literacy. I don't know, we haven't solved that puzzle. Joe or James, have you worked on that?
So we have not worked on that yet. We're in the 5th of 5 years of implementation of approval for our ACR program. We'll get a 1-year extension next year. And we do have some big decisions to make, including whether it will remain a licensure only program or if it will lead to a graduate degree or largely to that. As for MTTC changing and the implications for our program, we've just not taken that up yet.
Yeah, that's a big gray area for us, for the folks that, so I'm seeing, I guess, Susan, in 2 different categories. The folks that where we've been able to build this program where somebody could get an initial cert in secondary without being the teacher of record, I don't see that as a big struggle for us. We would use a tiered model like we do for our learning disabilities and early childhood program. You do these things, you submit evidence to get to the next tier of courses, so we can have those faculty committee checks on the pedagogical components, right? I don't know how we're going to address that for the folks that need to be licensed right out of the gate and then work towards, right? I think that's a bigger puzzle. And I wonder, again, how we might be able to do what years ago Madonna University did, what I thought was brilliant, was using those subject area exams as a way to determine what content coursework needed to be taken, right? Could we maybe work out something where the teacher of record who's working towards licensure in one of our residency programs is able to be that person, but able to take the exam maybe in components based on the grouping of courses that are being done or completed, right? I don't know, I think we're gonna have to figure that out with the Department of Ed in some way, because we're gonna slam all of these principals and superintendents back into the I can't find anybody box and can't get them hired because they can't pass the exam now.
Right. So, and kind of along those lines, one of the things that I've thought about is using the MTTC as a, as a screener, as an identifying strengths and weaknesses of their content knowledge, even the new one. So the new one certainly will also have pedagogy and content knowledge. So if we were to have candidates take that early in the program and then take it again later, assuming that they're going to take it and not pass, but then we know, okay, here are your content knowledge areas. We know the pedagogy we need to give you. You don't have that yet. But what I'm monitoring is how is that going to impact our performance score? Because certainly it will. So again, I'm not sure that that's the right solution, but that has crossed my mind, Joe, to use that early on. Now we have teachers of record and are able to get them permitted through MDE without MTTC. Yeah, there are ways to get them permitted.
So I need to learn more about that process to support up here. Okay.
Sean could probably weigh in and explain it.
Well, and those are like super common questions, right? And I'm really hesitant to answer that directly to a superintendent because there's money attached to that for them. And I don't want to be that guy that, so.
Yeah, and I see Jennifer's, thank you, Sean, for popping in. The cost issue, I mean, we would just probably be transparent and say, here's the cost of the program. You're going to have to pay, for taking that test twice. If we were to go down that route, we would just build that in and be transparent. Sean?
Yeah, building that in or using vouchers. Now, as far as the permit goes, the participants in an approved residency program are able to take advantage of a superintendent waiver to get a full year basic permit without passage of the MTTC for these areas. So it's a streamlined run through. We do need to renew that waiver in order to keep going with that. But that's very helpful. And I see as Michelle noted in the chat, the one of the acceptable expenditures in the Grow Your Own has been test fees, so that can be applied for, and is a pretty cheap date when we're thinking of 10,000 per teacher, and we see we only need about 700 to do a buffer of a couple of test attempts or for a couple of people. That's not bad. So there's flexibility within the permit system, and then we have both with our grants and then with the vouchers that are available.
Sean, one of the reasons I posed the question is I heard Susan say that they were using it as content and like that. My understanding is when the new secondary tests come out, yes, there'll be a professional knowledge and then the content part of it, but pedagogy is also woven into those content parts of the test. And that's where I'm wondering if we're going to be able to use that as a measure of content knowledge for an admission purpose.
Yeah, no, it's a good, I mean, you could use an attempt. I mean, one of those that could do a modification, you have to have an attempt, and then we prescribe, which is how our programs are working now. Like if somebody comes and takes, say, integrated science and gets, 3 or 4 of the sub areas really well, and then it's low on one, you can prescribe a course of study to enhance that skill. I mean, we do have one of the things, but talk with in the dean's job alike is is actually about MTTC supports. It's a question I have for consideration, which I'm glad to see the open discussion about it here. Because yes, what happens if somebody has ones across the board? I mean, what does that mean? The advantage of the residency programs and expedited programs is they're housed at places that have a comprehensive program already in that area. So it would become an advisement issue, like, well, perhaps you need to go in this direction. We know that with the next generation of tests, an English major may have some difficulty with the ELA test, and because of the flexibility built into the residency model, with that permit flexibility, then that does give you an opportunity to get the person in the class, do some work with them, and get them, as long, because they don't need the test until that last point of when they're ready to be certified.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Sean, will the secondary, do you know, tests be similar where the professional skills is a separate subtest? You know how the elementary is 4 different, and you can pass one
Right.
section without having to retake another section. Will it be similar?
It'll be a little different in that each of the core areas, ELA, math, science, social studies, will have a single compensatory test similar to what we have right now in those areas, and that the professional will be built as a separate test, but like the size of a subtest, not the full $129, $139 build of a comprehensive 100-question test, but rather the same sort of size and cost as the professional knowledge and skills assessment for the that is in the PK3 and the 3.6.
So similar on 712, if they pass the professional skills for 712 and then also take the English, they wouldn't have to take professional skills again if they wanted to add history, for instance.
Right. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, you wouldn't have to keep doing it for adding social studies, math, whatever.
So it's attached to the grade band in essence.
Right.
So with the professional knowledge test for 5.9 and 7.12, will that be the same? So that if someone is going to add a 5.9 endorsement and the 7.12 endorsement, it's one professional knowledge test for both, correct?
I believe not. No, it's building 2 separate small ones, because
Okay.
we're looking at different.
Grade band.
Right. Okay. So it's going to be similar to the elementary band, where if you do PK3, you take a professional knowledge for PK3. And then if you do 3.6, you take another professional knowledge for 3.6. So it's going to be the same setup for the
Yes.
5.9, 7.12. There'll be one for 5.9, another one for 7.12.
Yeah. And
Okay.
really highlighting the middle
Yep.
school in that 5.9 and older adolescents in that 7.12.
Got it. Thanks.
So we have about 5 minutes left with our panelists. Do we have additional questions or thoughts?
I want to jump in and just express how amazing it's been to have this program. Working with adult future teachers is so different from working with traditional undergrads. And it's just so rewarding. Sometimes they just come with different baggage, right? Some of them have families and kids and different challenges, but it's just really rewarding. So, I would encourage, especially some of the small independents, our program is very small, and yet I run the numbers and it's very, sustainable in terms of the costs that it puts in our program to sustain it. It's very doable. We can really meet the needs of our partners. In fact, this year in particular, we have school districts sending candidates to us, just from our region, just from our small partners, you know, people who have been long-term subs, people who've been, like I said, school librarians or whatever. They need teachers, and they've got people in their buildings, in their districts that they know, and they're willing to support and work with them. We just have to provide the other piece of the puzzle. And so it's been very rewarding.
And to add, if you hopefully you read the chat, but there were questions about retention of candidates from these programs. And I think James and Susan both reported that the retention is really strong, 95% or, and Joe, I don't know if you're seeing the same thing.
Similar for us. Yeah, it's just they've committed, right? I mean, these are the communities for us. These are the communities they want to live in and raise a family in, right? Yeah.
Great. On that note, I want to thank the panelists. I know you're all busy. James and Joe kind of worked us in between all their other meetings. So we really, really appreciate that. And that was really interesting. I really appreciated the discussion for sure. Giving me ideas. Okay. Thank you for sharing. Thank you. I think our next, we are at a break for 10 minutes. We're a little early. So we're at, what time is it? My clock just went away, 10:48. We'll do a break for 10 minutes. We'll be back at 10:58. Hey, oops, I missed it. 11:59. So I think everybody should, yeah, we could give everybody till 11, just we finished early, but we do have, our next is MDE updates.
Yes. Good morning. We have a robust team. All of our prep members are here. Dr. Gina Garner, Dr. Ahlam Bazi Mugnia. We also have Darcy McMahon. We have Dana Utterback. We have Krista Reed. Sarah Kate Levan is here. Jason Kalmbach from Data and Accountability is here. I believe Kate Boswell Gallagher was in and out. She may be in at this point, not sure. And I think that cover. Oh, and Donna had obviously was here. And Bridget McDowell for our MTTC. One name I didn't mention, and you'll notice on the written updates is our fearless unit secretary, Dan Mambiella, has picked up another promotion to another division of MDE. And so we miss him greatly after only a couple of weeks. And some of you may have gotten little emails back from him that say I've moved on to another position. But we wish him all the best. We'd like to make an offer to bring him back if we can, in any way, shape, or form. But in the meantime, that's where we stand. Both Dana and I are able to monitor that Educator programs at michigan.gov email box. So anything that gets into there will come to our attention, and we'll process and take care of it. As always, we like to encourage everyone to follow our office on social media. Be sure to like and follow all of our various streams. Use that hashtag Proud Michigan Educator, hashtag PME, for all of your social media needs, promoting our the work of your school. And also don't forget to subscribe to that Educationally Speaking newsletter that's there. Found of all the various communication channels that are that we use, that one seems to get the most attention, to judge by reactions in the field to the Grow Your Own grants. It was when it was announced in those documents that more customer service requests came in for that. So that more than anything else. So let's go right ahead. Again, reminder to read those written updates we sent out each quarter. Not everything that we want to share with you can be covered, of course, in the course of a meeting. So we strive to put as much information in there and a contact page at the end for that. So I'll give you some legislative updates. The reciprocity bills that Mike McDonald referenced earlier, Senator McBroom introduced in partnership with MTE to make teachers without a state certification, streamline the process for Michigan certification. And Senator McCann has a similar bill in partnership with MTE to address out-of-state licensure. Overall, again, streamlines the process, modifies required documentation for all. For veteran teachers, allows for experience in lieu of testing, expands the current ability to standard certificates, eliminates that 18-hour master's requirement for veteran teachers in order to be who are coming from out of state, in order to be more in line with in-state requirements. Improves the alignment in the reciprocity process between teachers and school counselors also. And so, yes, those bills have our support. Much news on dyslexia. The Senate reported out of committee on a set of bills, they were in their third iteration. So there were sub 3 bills that, or sub 2, anyway, there was a sub 1 and a sub 2. Anyway, the most recent one, they rewrote and reported those out of committee. House bills were only just recently introduced, and they've not been scheduled for any kind of hearing yet. The dyslexia bills are pretty comprehensive. They deal with both in the PK-12 space, mandating pre-screening, having MDE establish an advisory committee to guide policy around dyslexia. There are items related to teacher preparation and ensuring that all programs offer a course of study in dyslexia to all candidates, and puts that contingent on both institutional and program approvals. So there is a provision in one of those bills, I believe it's the 383, to revoke institutional approvals as EPIs if that is not, if that dyslexia course of study is not available to a wide range of licensure types. So keep an eye on those. There'll be a lot to unpack as that moves forward. We feel very confident that the standards that we've built for PK3 and 3.6 are built on evidence-based practices, quality evidence-based practices in the teaching of literacy, as well as the quote unquote science of reading, and that the standards and the corresponding assessment would not need to be altered in order to address the items that are in this legislation. But that doesn't mean we wouldn't have some documentation so that those elements are highlighted should these become law. So keep an eye on that. Substitute teaching by retirees, Senate Bill 726, allows for retirees to come back and sub without reducing their benefits after they've been retired for 4 months, rather than instead of the 12 months, which has been currently policy. Educator evaluation, suspending the requirements for ed-evals for the current school year, has not yet been scheduled for a committee meeting. And we want to highlight our Michigan Teacher of the Year, Leah Porter, wrote an opinion piece. I'm Michigan's Teacher of the Year. My colleagues need legislative relief to help drive attention to the recommendations that both Superintendent Rice and Governor Whitmer called on the legislature to enact as part of the supplemental budget for the current fiscal year and the budget for the next fiscal year and beyond from that. The spring has arrived, yet the appropriation bills have not been passed. There's a QR code there. You can access the that editorial and would be worth citing and linking to within any communications you may have with legislative staff. All right, head to Data and Accountability Unit with Jason.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. Just two quick updates for folks. One is just on the surveys. The candidate suite surveys and the year out survey are both in the field. You can see the current response there. Just quick reminder, right? The candidate suite surveys, that's part of the EPI performance score. The year out survey is not part of the EPI performance score, but we just collect that information that hopefully you all will find it useful. You can see the response rates there. My intent is to send out a reminder to folks next week about, hey, the survey's out. Please take it when you get a chance. We're still only about a third of the way through the collection period, so still about 2 more months for folks to complete the survey. And then next week we will be sending out the administrator survey. That will be open for the dates you see there from April 13th to July 10th. And then quick note on Title II. So I was in contact with the Title II team yesterday, but also one of the APIs was in contact with Freddie Cross at the Department of Education earlier this week. And just to let you know, we got the same answer from multiple folks. So the close date for that data collection, we were both told it will be about mid-June. When you will be able to actually start entering data, the EPI was told that the website will grant access to the data collections forms next week. I was told a week or two, so some little fuzzy language there, but either way, it looks like you're going to have roughly maybe 7-8 weeks to complete the data collection. And again, all emails pertaining to those timelines and whatnot will be coming from the RTI email address that you see there, title2@rti.org. And then Sherry had a question. Will Indy send out the list of which alumni are? Yes, Sherry, my intent is to send that out next week for both the year out survey and the administrator survey. I was my fault. I was not aware that we send out the year out rosters there, so I will get those out to you. But then I can also get the administrator contacts out to you as well. So yep, will do.
All right. Next, to talk about our new standards of work is Darcy McMahon, who is going by the name Michael McDonald today, if you're looking at the Zoom screen.
Yeah, just feel free to call me Mikey. All right, good morning, everyone. Good to see you all and be here with you. So we're excited to announce, and many of you probably already saw and already know, that we have new science standards approved as of February 8th State Board of Education meeting. Yes, yay. Thank you all for all of your support, all your hard work. And it's really great to have this new set of standards. They come in 2 documents. They are linked there, and perhaps someone can also put them in the chat for us in case you want to go check them out for yourself. And I've put here this little table is a diagram that we have for each standard as an appendix. And what is showing is really how these standards were built from a framework and built out. And so there's a framework that has what we termed in our writing committee 3 facets: the facets of science teaching practices, core knowledge for teaching science, and the guiding principles for teaching science. And so each of the science standards has each of these three facets woven in a very thoughtful and intentional way. But also we wanted to make sure that it was visible, that all of you could see which ones were woven in. And certainly in instruction, in implementation, as these get moved into coursework and classrooms and programs, those facets are important to kind of keep in mind and can be creatively implemented within programs as well. Next slide, please. And one thing to keep in mind, while we only have 2 documents, we have middle grades science and we have high school science. These endorsements are included. So all science teachers will either earn middle grade science or a high school science endorsement. And then optional disciplinary specialization endorsements can be added to those. So a candidate who earns a middle grade science could choose to add biology, earth and space science, or physical science for the middle grades. And a candidate who earns a high school science endorsement could choose to add on biology, chemistry, earth and space, or physics. So just wanted to make sure that that was clear. Those endorsements look a little different and new kind of structure. So, all right, next slide. Thank you. This, we had a couple of requests for the timeline. What does it look like? How might we begin to implement? And so I have brought here some things that you're familiar with, the middle grades and high school ELA, mathematics, and professional timeline as an example and comparison. And then you can see there highlighted in yellow, the middle, here's what we anticipate being the timeline for middle grades and high school science. Our first window for applying, for programs to apply, will be November of this year. And yes, that's fast, but that is purposefully by request, since we had several programs who wanted to try to align all 4 of the core contents together. And so this window might allow you to be able to do that. And you can see there how that plays out along for the expected first enrollment in programs and first graduates. And when the new MTTCs will be offered, we are anticipating that in 2024. Social studies is coming along right behind it, and we are very hopeful that those a draft of those standards will be going out to social studies colleagues around the state for review soon, and that ideally these would be first presented to the board for their awareness in August, and then go out for public comment and ideally go back for approval to the board in October of this year. So then you can see there where we anticipate the windows for application for those programs as well. All right. And then maybe before we get to those, I haven't been able to keep up with the chat, but if there are questions about science in there, perhaps we should talk about that.
There are not.
Okay.
But we'll happily entertain some.
Yes.
There is a thank you note, though, for all your work on the science standards from Brian at Alma.
Thank you. Right back at you, Brian. We appreciate your help as well. All right. And thanks for putting in the links, and you got to see the new website as well and how fancy it looks. All right. And then we know that right now, I mean, this has been called by some, all the change that we are undergoing with all the different grade bands and the standards. We've heard you call this kind of a sea change. Like there's a lot going on and everything is feeling perhaps in flux, and a lot of things on our plates, as you all, I'm sure, are feeling that. So we've developed here a little survey that we would love to have your input about, and feel free to send this to the folks who are working on the new applications, the folks who are considering how do I implement this in classrooms and aspects like that. Please share that survey with all of them. We would love to have feedback and know how we might better support you. How can we help you with this great work that all of you are doing, and all that you envision for your programs? What would be the best way that we could help you achieve everything that you hope to with your programs? So I've just put the link to the survey there. It's also in the slide and in the notes to the slide. So again, feel free to share that. And I'm not sure if there are other pieces or aspects, Sean, that you might want me to talk about with this, or.
Well, a couple notes that says that the slide or the survey is asking for permissions when people go to it. I think you have to log in. If you've got a Google account and you're logged in, it comes up, and need to log into that. I clicked through and it went right to it, but I was logged into my Google account. So
you are also a collaborator on the survey, so I will double check that link, and I'll put a new link in as soon as my portion's done.
Darcy, that might just be a setting. I had to fix that on a couple of surveys I had yesterday. There's an automatic only state of Michigan setting in there. So dig in and you'll see it, and you can click that.
Thank you.
And we also have a hand raised.
yeah, see Kate has a hand.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. So the first one is a pretty basic one, which is, do we have a timeline for expecting the release of the proposal worksheets for people to start working on these?
Yes, so thank you for asking that, Kate. And in fact, we had that question, or a related question, I should say, yesterday. We expect for both the intent to offer forms and the science application forms should be ready by the end of this month. So watch for those to be coming out shortly.
Okay, and then my second question is, and I think that it said this, but now it's not up, so I'm not sure, but the first round for the social studies submissions is April 2023, is that right?
That's anticipated, yes, if everything
ideal
is going to plan.
With ideally then the first admissions into it in fall of 2023?
Correct. Yeah.
So my recollection, and I might be wrong on this, is that when we submitted November proposals, they were approved in May, which is like 6 months later. Mm-hmm. So April plus 6 is October, which is already halfway through fall semester for the approval.
Yeah. So what the timeline for approval has been, we do tend to get them, or try to get them out by the end of March, actually. So all of our programs that submitted in April will be getting notification today on their status. And then, so that's a little bit quicker. And then for our April window, we try really hard to get that feedback out to programs by the beginning of August, the end of July.
Okay.
Does that help?
I mean, kind of, and I don't think it matters because it's not like everybody has to implement that first fall. It's just that like once can't speak for other universities, but once we're approved by MDE, we then have to get approved by the university, which takes not a short period of time. Maybe others are smaller and more nimble, but okay. I'm just trying to think through the timing of whether or not we'd be able to launch science and social studies together. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And it may be also, I think some university procedure, you do university approval before MDE. So I think that there are different cases, Kate, that makes sense. I see Beth's got a hand.
But just as long as it's okay for us to do the next year, then we're fine. If people can get it earlier,
Oh, yeah.
because we're in the same boat as Kate. It has to be in by January for the university to get it approved for the following fall. And
Okay.
so that'll work out. So as long as we're okay, good on you if you can get on earlier, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Mhm.
So a couple questions in the chat, one from Marcia about having additional application windows for ELA and math. So institutions could potentially bring in all disciplines at the same time. No issues with that from our perspective. We think that makes good sense. We push the message of braiding programs and standards together. And so if you're working, comprehensively, then that makes good sense. So yeah, we can do that very easily. And Catherine
I posed
Hershey
the question
also
because in the chart it didn't list them. So I posed the question because in your chart it didn't list any additional timeframes for math and ELA, and so that's why I was raising it too.
Yeah, we can add those in. That's.
Thank you.
Sorry, Darcy, you were starting to.
Nope, I was just saying about the same thing. So. Mhm.
And Catherine Hershey asked a question, and if someone has a standard science 712 cert, can they teach high school biology without the biology endorsement? Under what circumstances might this happen? Yes, and feel free. Please expand on that, Darcy.
Okay, thanks. Yes, so the science endorsement is intended to allow a candidate to teach all of the content areas within science at that grade band. There is in the introduction to the standards more details about specifically the focus of each grade band. And because our K-12 standards are slightly off of our grade banding for teacher certification, some of the content is more focused at 712. It's really focused on that high school understanding. And for 959, it's really focused on the middle grades content understanding according to the standards. So just know. And it describes there what everyone is really well prepared to teach. So the additional endorsements also, just to clarify, a 5.9 candidate, for example, who earns a 5.9 biology on top of their science would then be really well prepared to teach life science to 9th grade students. That's kind of what they're adding and kind of showing that they're specializing in. And then for a 712 candidate, if they add chemistry, for example, to their science endorsement, they would be well prepared to teach those 12th grade courses, which typically end up being honors courses, chemistry 2, perhaps AP or IB, which comes with its own training as well, but they would be more prepared for those that level of coursework.
I feel like I just want to make sure too that I'm getting it. So I hope I'm not being ridiculous here, but does this mean then a district, if they wanted to, could slot somebody in to an AP chemistry course with just the 712 science if they wanted to, with the understanding that if they got the endorsement, yes, they would be better prepared, but it is not required to teach those classes. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, an AP course might be an interesting example because I think that they would AP would require their own extra training somewhat, but an honors chemistry course, yes.
And Catherine, they can do that now with the integrated science endorsement. So that's not a change.
Yeah, and we do hope. I mean, we really clearly targeted the content needed for grades 9-12. So we do really hope that will
be a great foundation and really solid preparation. Where I know sometimes we struggled with integrated science because those standards were really initially more targeted toward middle grades. But many candidates were earning, that secondary grade band with it. And hopefully this will be even stronger preparation than it has been.
So just to be clear, because there's I've been within this, in the weeds with this, as you know, Mikey. But there's a difference between on paper and then messaging, right? Which is going to be, always the sort of complicated stuff, because on paper, this is a lot like our DX or DI and then DI. That is the general science certification allows people the same opportunities in terms of what they can teach as the DI does now. Mm-hmm. But the messaging is that, you are always better prepared if you see yourself as someone who wants to teach upper level courses that drill deeper in getting an additional endorsement in a specific area like chemistry or biology or physics. But on paper, really, it looks quite, not in terms of the content, but in terms of the label and the allowable teaching courses, it's a lot like the DI. Actually, there really is no difference. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah. Yes,
You
I
agree?
appreciate that. Yes, yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah, I do appreciate that. And others of you who've been working on this and on the committee, if you'd like to jump in for any of these, please feel free to jump in. And I noticed we have one more question from Brian. Would the interdisciplinary specializations be their own program proposal? Right now, we're envisioning that as one program proposal. For middle grades. I have to remember, those of you, if anybody remembers reviewing that for me, I think it's one program proposal for the middle grades and one for the high school is how we envisioned it for this time. So that would be all the middle grades endorsements could go in together in one.
Just quickly, I think the biggest impact that I suspect seeing, and poor Darcy's heard me harp on this, is those math majors with science minors are no longer possible. So you're going to lose a lot of those science teachers. And that's the biggest impact that I see.
It's going to be challenging to have to get it done within a 4-year program. Yes.
The other one you would lose is all the agri-science folks.
Hmm.
Those programs that have those institutions that have agri-science ed, they are 99% of the time some kind of science minor.
The other group that we've talked about that it's going to be impacted some on this is career changers. And if so, depending on what the career changing is from, with this covering across all the sciences, the preparation and the readiness into a program like this for some of the residency programs like we were talking about earlier, I think is also going to be a challenge for our institutions as we try to figure out how to supplement and help. And it's going to be a challenge that we've got to figure out.
My sense is that this might actually turn out helping them. It would be an interesting thing to track pretty carefully.
Good. Great, thank you for those questions. One quick coming soon and stay tuned. Ahlam will be sending out a survey for institutions that have the world language and ESL programs to help guide the transitioning from our world language programs to being PK-12 only, and our ESL programs to PK-12 only, as reflected in the cert structure diagram. We're not releasing new standards in those areas, but rather working with the standards we have and additional technical assistance resources to help unpack what the P of PK means in those two endorsement areas. But stay tuned. That will be coming soon from her. And I don't want to take up more time of the Java likes, but I think we've got had a lot of good questions addressed here. So I turn it back to our leadership team.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, MDE. That was good. Okay, so we have Java likes. We're just about right on time. So I think, Brian, we'll get to choose our breakout room and head into our Java likes. We'll be there for about a half an hour and we'll come back, report out, and close up for the day.
So we had some discussion starters. Beth had opened just with a question that there's legislation pending regarding supporting mentor teachers in the healthcare, like nursing practitioners. It would be $1,000 tax credit, and just sort of, and there's bipartisan support, this idea of maybe it's something we should consider, but she also said we have to remember that going down the path, there may be some additional considerations. But this idea that additional support is looked at and there's legislation out there is something to notice. Sean asked about MTT supports for candidates. Many individuals shared. There's a lot of things happening in terms of test prep. Oh, and I forgot, Sean mentioned that they had looked at Massachusetts model and was thinking of doing something similar as well. But they have a lot of students asking for support, even though the pass rates have not changed. So he wanted to know what we are doing at our institutions. Many have, there are a couple that are using online modules, but also proprietary like study.com, Mometrics to provide that additional test taking support. Others are using a GA in or have used that helps support a course with modules. Some have office supports, some have materials that can be checked out, but what seems to keep coming to the top or seems to be a consistent thing is that a way to provide the online support, whether it's to sort of do a session with students or in an asynchronous format, that seems to be probably the more common, as it sounds like. But then it was asked if maybe Michigan Virtual would like to do something, work with the state to put test taking modules that from any institution people could take to get that support for the MTTC. Then we had a guest speaker pop in and said it's definitely a possibility. And Stacy Shu, I can help follow up with her or use my connections if people are interested. But that is, I think that could be a possibility too, to provide those additional supports for students who are struggling with the MTTC test. Is there anything I forgot? Okay.
No, thanks. And I would say when she said Massachusetts model, this is not about changing the tests to fit a Massachusetts model, but rather having resources on our website that reference test preparation materials in the way that Massachusetts has its own dedicated space on their website for them.
That would be great. You know, we're always looking for resources for students. So, and the new MTTC webinars have been very helpful. Okay, accreditation, I'll report out on that. Update, Gina provided an update for the AQUEP pilot. It's going well. Those that are piloting AQUEP are Calvin Aquinas in Northern Michigan. MDE will review once all of institutions have completed a cycle and have gone through that. That'll be reviewed. The pilot will have site visits in fall of 2023. And so Gina anticipates a decision will be made no later than 2025. We discussed the data dump that comes and kind of initiatives that Jason and Kate are working on to do the data dashboard and how they plan to disseminate the data in the future. Jason right now is working with Microsoft Power BI, and that looks like that may be the path for the data dashboard. Jason also said when we do the data dump, if you would like the data in an SPSS format, to contact him, and he can often do that. So I thought that was wonderful news. And then there was some conversation about the CPAST and using a common a student teaching tool across the state for student teaching observations. So there was some concerns about and questions about why the use of a common tool, why are we moving in that direction? Some institutions are happy with their system they have for student teaching. I know others are open and possibly interested in moving to a common assessment tool for student teaching. And then MDE is currently gathering feedback. So if you have questions or concerns, not sure which direction to point you in, but I think Chris is working on, Shram is working on gathering that feedback. She has met with some of us already across several institutions. So that is what we talked about. So next up would be clinical and placement coordinators.
Okay, I'm reporting out for clinical. So we talked about three main topics. The first one was tools for watching video teaching and providing annotation. Most institutions are using GoReact if they are participating in this practice. There are a few that are using Google or looking at Zoom, since those are options that are lower cost to their students. But it sounded like most people are using GoReact, and those that are using GoReact are happy with the service that they're getting. We also talked about transportation expenses across institutions. Obviously, gas prices are higher, and we know that that is a burden on our students that are traveling from our institutions out into field sites for clinical. And so we did some idea sharing about supporting our candidates, whether it might be gas cards that are provided by a donor through like a food bank type option on campus, or districts providing gas cards to students. We talked about encouraging carpooling and cohorting, being flexible with placements to put students in closer proximity to their residents, partnering with public transportation to provide discounted rates. So we did a lot of idea sharing around ways that we could support students around transportation costs that are related to fieldwork. And then the third piece here, we talked about training on core teaching practices, and we shared kind of what different institutions were doing. Oakland does some August workshops. A couple institutions like SVSU and Western do some modules. There are MSU uses a core teaching practice aligned assessment, and they do some training around that. So their host teachers do get some core teaching practice work around those things. Most of us feel that what we are doing is not systematic yet or cyclical. And so that's an area of growth that we're trying, but it just hasn't all come together yet. So that is what we talked about.
Perfect. Thank you, Jillian. And I'm assuming our certification officers are here. I see Jamie. So yes, certification officers report out.
Yes, hi, it's Michelle from Aquinas. In our Job Alike session, we talked about whether or not the placement guide is going to be updated to mirror the new grade banding. And yes, the MDE confirmed that they are working on that. There was a question about what the difference is between the early childhood VS endorsement and the birth to pre-K grade band. And it includes that special ed piece, and there's like a practicum that's involved with that. CMU mentioned that they have students that are graduating this May with the birth to pre-K grade band, but there is no currently there is no test that they can take. So they asked what are some alternative solutions or resolutions to this. The MDE confirmed that they are working on these and will get back to CMU with those solutions. There was a question from MSU about they're only offering the one of the new elementary grade bands, and they wanted to know what the reciprocity is or looks like for their students that will be finishing with them and then moving to another state. MDE said that it is a tricky process, but that when the other states contact them, once they review the paperwork, they match the candidate's cert level as best as they can to the state that they're moving to. And because of the teacher shortage, most states are willing to match that pretty as closely as possible. Hopefully I said that right. There was a question about basically just confirmation that we all heard that the Title II new due date is mid-June. And then there was also an issue. Apparently there is an issue with logging into the new Try One site. It's got a double authentication. So they're emailing a code and it's taking about a half hour for that new company to send the code back. And by the time the code gets sent back and users try to log in, it's expired. And they mentioned that we're having to use our personal emails to get that to work. And if we are having issues, to contact Jason at the MDE, and he will need to help set up our personal emails with the new company. There was also, it was brought up about the OPI audits that were just done. And one of the institutions who were not included in the audit asked what they could expect. And basically those institutions that were included in this audit just confirmed that basically the state is looking for confirmation of candidate scores, that their system may be missing some. And then it was asked what's the best way for students who are having issues logging into MOEX to contact the MDE. It was confirmed that using the link that's provided on the login page for MOEX, as well as the general contact email, are the best routes for students to get a hold of them. There was a question brought up about some of our older students coming out of the woodwork and contacting us where they've completed all of their coursework, but now it's 10, 15 years later. They hadn't taken the MTTC test. Are there alternate routes for students to do rather than completing all of the coursework again? A couple of institutions chimed in that they use portfolio methods, they use institution reviews, or they have the student do practicums. And then the last piece, it was brought up that MOEX will be, MOEX is partnering with CEPI, or the MDE is partnering with CEPI to update the MOEX system. As of right now, because the MDE hasn't looked to their website and that isn't mirroring on MOEX, we were informed that in about 2 to 3 years, there will be a whole new MOEX system. Yay, that's exciting news. And one of the questions was, will MOEX now be able to search based on names? And fingers crossed, we're hoping that that will be an option. And that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Any questions for any of the groups? I can clarify our concern with our BKs graduating early. I know Sean told me that we did get an answer, but I'm just concerned about, is there a way to get them fully certified versus being on a temporary permit until the test is available? So I think we just have some concerns about them not being paid fully, or if we're just going to have to wait, they're going to have to wait a year because we got them done too soon.
We've got a few options in place that I'm sending out this afternoon to those programs that have been approved that may have graduates that are coming out this summer. We have a couple of options in place. I'm going to be sending that out. I'm trying to pull that together right now. But I'll send that out to everybody just to see, you know, what options they could have to get something, whether it's temporary or to actually get a certification.
Okay, that would be helpful because they're asking, and you know.
Yep.
Thank you, Gina.
Yep.
I just wanted to acknowledge that Sean did respond to me. I wasn't, yes, that's all I was saying. Okay. Any other questions? Well, thank you everybody for a great DARTEP year. Thanks again to the team. And I think Susan wants to say something.
Sorry, yes, a big thank you to Jennifer for being our chair this year. Not being in person is a little hard to thank her, but thank you so much. It takes a lot of time and we really, really appreciate your good work.
Thank you, Susan. No, thank you, everybody. Yes, virtual is different. So hopefully we get to see each other in person next year. So. Okay, well, that is it. Thank you. Have a good weekend.